My name is Eleanor Brooks, 68 years old. Once an investigative journalist who made corrupt men lose sleep. But that day, I wasn't the woman who exposed scandals on national TV. I was simply a mother, sitting quietly at my daughter's wedding. The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and crystal glasses, laughter echoing like champagne bubbles. Yet somehow, I was placed at table 12, half hidden behind a floral arrangement so massive it could hide a forest. I smiled politely as waiters brushed past, pretending not to notice that the bride's own mother had been seated like an afterthought. Across the room, Nathan Caldwell, my daughter's groom, looked every bit the charming man, tall, confident, with a smile polished enough to sell real estate to the sky. He came over, carrying that same grin, syrupy and calculated. "Mrs. Brooks," he said smoothly, "it's an honor to finally meet my beautiful mother-in-law." His tone was sweet, but his eyes, they were the kind of eyes that measure, not admire. A predator disguised as a gentleman. I'd seen those eyes before in boardrooms, in interviews, in courtrooms. They always belonged to men who thought they could outsmart me. So I smiled back, gentle but sharp. "The honor's mine, Nathan. I do hope you're ready for what comes after the vows." He laughed, but only for a second. Something flickered behind that perfect expression. He had no idea that beneath my calm exterior, I was already watching, analyzing, waiting. And as the music played and toasts were raised, I knew one thing for certain. Nathan Caldwell wasn't marrying into a family. He was walking straight into a storm he'd never see coming. If you're still listening, we want to sincerely thank you for spending your time with us. Truly means a lot. We'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments and let's see how far this message has reached. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, I highly recommend doing it now so you won't miss any of our upcoming stories. These aren't just ordinary stories, they're filled with meaningful life lessons that can inspire, teach, and stay with you long after the video ends. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing community. The wedding ended the way most weddings do: laughter, photographs, and the faint aftertaste of champagne and pretense. Guests drifted away and I stood by the door, waving goodbye as Lily and Nathan drove off toward their honeymoon in Lake Tahoe. She looked radiant through the window, her hand raised in excitement. Nathan, on the other hand, didn't look at me once. When the last car disappeared, I finally allowed myself a slow breath. The air outside smelled of roses and wet pavement. I had played my part, the polite, unremarkable mother who said little and smiled on cue. No one noticed that the same hands holding that clutch bag had once held confidential files that toppled corporations. That night, when I returned home to my small cottage on the outskirts of San Francisco, I poured myself a glass of wine and turned off my phone. The silence felt familiar, almost sacred. Then, for the first time that day, I spoke, not to anyone in the room but to the audience who had been with me all along. "You see," I said quietly, setting the glass down, "3 years ago my husband Charles Brooks, founder of one of Silicon Valley's early software empires, passed away." The fire crackled softly as I opened an old wooden box on the table. Inside were a few photographs, a faded wedding ring, and one document sealed in gold-trimmed paper. Before he died, Charles left me something no one knew about: a trust fund of $50 million. It was his way of ensuring that, even when the world turned cold, I would always have power in silence. But I didn't use that money. I didn't move into a mansion or buy designer clothes. Instead, I stayed in this modest house with peeling paint and a garden full of lavender, because I learned long ago that wealth draws wolves. And Nathan Caldwell, my charming new son-in-law, had the scent of one. When I first met him, I recognized the type. Ambition hiding behind affection, charm polished until it gleamed like glass but just as fragile. Men like him were the reason Charles never wanted Lily to marry into money. But love, or what young people call love, doesn't care for warnings. So I kept my secret. Even Lily didn't know. She believed her mother lived on a journalist's pension, modest but comfortable, and I preferred it that way. It allowed me to observe freely, to move unnoticed. People underestimate you when they think you have nothing. That's the greatest advantage of all. Sometimes I'd catch my reflection in the window, silver hair tied neatly, soft wrinkles around eyes that had seen too much of the world. I'd smile faintly. The world saw an old widow. I saw a strategist waiting for her cue. Every so often, I'd visit the bank, Check on the trust account quietly registered under a foundation name that no one could trace. Charles had designed it that way. A maze of legal layers that even the smartest attorney would need months to decode. It was both a gift and a warning. Never let them see your cards until it's time to play. As the days after the wedding passed, Nathan began sending messages, polite at first, asking about Lily's childhood, about my husband. He wanted to get to know the family. I answered little, never directly, because I knew what he was really after: information. Information that leads to opportunity, and opportunity that leads to control. I'd seen his kind unravel before. Greedy men often mistake patience for weakness. They rush in, certain that the quiet ones are easy prey. What Nathan didn't know, what no one knew, was that I had spent a lifetime studying predators. And now one had just walked into my family. So I smiled to myself that evening, watching the city lights flicker beyond the window. The chessboard was set, and every move he made from now on would bring him closer to the trap he couldn't see. "I've kept this secret for 3 years," I whispered, tracing the edge of the trust papers. "But soon it will serve its purpose." Then I turned off the lamp, letting the room fall into darkness. In that silence my plan began to take shape, quiet, deliberate, and deadly precise. 3 days after the wedding, the rain returned to San Francisco, soft, deliberate, like the city was washing away the glitter of celebration. I had just finished my morning tea when the doorbell rang. Standing there in his tailored navy suit and charming smile was Nathan Caldwell, my brand new son-in-law. "Mrs. Brooks," he said warmly, holding a briefcase. "I hope I'm not intruding. I just wanted to stop by to talk about something important." I gestured for him to come in. "Of course, Nathan. Your family now," I said, my tone polite but distant. He looked around the modest living room, clearly surprised by its simplicity. Wooden shelves lined with old books, a vintage record player, the faint smell of jasmine tea. I could almost hear his thoughts. "Where's the money?" Nathan cleared his throat, setting the briefcase on the coffee table. "I've been thinking," he began. "Now that Lily and I are married, we should make sure your financial and medical affairs are in order. You know, just to protect you. And the family." Ah, there it was, the velvet trap. Wrapped in care, tied with deceit. He slid a few papers toward me, power of attorney documents, both financial and medical. "These would just give us the ability to help manage things if something ever happened," he explained smoothly. "Purely precautionary." His words dripped with practiced sincerity. I'd interviewed politicians with the same tone before their careers crumbled. I smiled faintly, keeping my voice soft. "That's very thoughtful of you, Nathan. I'll need a little time to read through all of this." His expression faltered for a split second, the mask slipping just enough. Of course," he said quickly. "Actually, I know a wonderful notary who could meet us for lunch. I can take care of everything. Easy, painless." I tilted my head. "Lunch sounds lovely. How about the Cliffside Bistro this Friday?" His eyes lit up. A predator thinking he'd just cornered his prey. "Perfect," he said. After he left, I poured myself another cup of tea and opened my old leather notebook, the one I hadn't touched since Charles died. My late husband had once told me, "Eleanor, the world is full of men who smile while sharpening their knives." Nathan was exactly that kind of man. That night, I reviewed every page of those protective documents. They were masterfully crafted. Not by him, of course, but by some lawyer he'd likely hired. Hidden within the jargon were clauses that would transfer control of my accounts and assets to him should I become unfit. Unfit, such a flexible word. I closed the file and exhaled slowly. My instincts as a journalist returned, sharper than ever. I remembered the faces of the liars I'd once exposed, men like Nathan, who underestimated calm women with quiet eyes. By Friday, when I arrived at the Cliffside Bistro, I was dressed in pearl gray silk and carried my late husband's old fountain pen. Nathan was already there, beaming like a man about to close a deal. "Mrs. Brooks. Right on time. The notary's waiting," he said, gesturing toward a woman in a blazer seated nearby. "Wonderful," I replied with a smile. I placed my handbag down, folded my hands, and met his gaze steadily. Nathan began his pitch, confident, rehearsed. But as he spoke, I wasn't listening to the words. I was memorizing every detail. His tone, his hand movements, the faint twitch near his left eye when he lied. He thought this was a simple lunch meeting, but what he didn't realize was that I wasn't the naive widow he imagined. I was gathering evidence for my game, not his, and by the time it was over, it wouldn't be my signature that sealed his fate. It would be his own greed. I called Rachel Nguyen the moment the documents left my hand and Nathan's grin had time to settle into my memory. Rachel and I had been roommates in law school. She, all sharp angles and quicker comebacks. I, the obsessive reporter who would not sleep until a source had been chased down. Time had only made her sterner and more precise. When I told her what Nathan had brought to my living room, she didn't laugh. She asked one question. "Do you have proof?" "Not yet," I admitted. "But I have his eagerness, and that's almost as good." We met in her office that afternoon. A sunlit room with law books that smelled faintly of lemon oil and government filings. Rachel read the sample clauses in Nathan's paperwork and didn't need more than a page. Her face, which had been neutral, hardened. "He's not just careless," she said quietly. "He's trained. These clauses are built to fast-track guardianship. If he files for it piece by piece, the judge might grant temporary control before anyone notices. And the language about unfitness? That's a doorway. And?" I asked. "And he has the profile of a man who rushes when he fears being outmaneuvered." I checked some public records. Gambling debts, suspicious transfers tied to shell companies that buy and sell property within weeks. It's exactly the kind of laundering pattern I'd expect around a string of sham real estate deals. "He's not alone." Rachel's voice had the metallic edge of someone who'd seen such webs unravel. "We were not talking about a single schemer, this was a network." Rachel recommended an ex-colleague at the U.S. Attorney's Office. He recommended a contact at the FBI who specialized in elder financial abuse and money laundering. Within 48 hours, I had a federal agent with a pocket square and polite eyes sitting across from me, listening more than speaking. He didn't promise theatrics. He promised procedure. "Eleanor," he said, "we can move if you give us the opportunity, but we need controlled evidence. We need him to show intent on the record." That sentence, "show intent on the record," became the hinge of my life. For 3 decades I'd coaxed truth from stubborn mouths. Now I had to make a liar show his own hand. Rachel and the agents designed the operation like a newspaper expose. They advised me on what to let slip, how to play the part. I would be the trembling widow, uncertain and flattered by Nathan's helpfulness. They would plant cameras in inconspicuous places in my house, the hallway clock, the lamp in the sitting room, a tiny lens concealed in a flowering pot on the porch. An audio device would capture everything at the lunch meeting. Every encounter would be recorded to the letter. The day before the dinner I called Nathan myself, my voice tuned to the exact pitch Rachel suggested. Soft, a touch shaken, fragile enough to elicit his protector instinct. "Nathan," I whispered into the phone, letting the words wobble like a poorly tuned violin. I think you were right. I can't manage all of this alone. Maybe I need help. I'll sign the papers on Monday 3 o'clock. Please come by. I don't feel safe making these decisions without someone I can trust." He breathed out a sound that was almost prayerful relief. "Of course, Mrs. Brooks. I'll be there. I'll take care of everything." We set the clock. The FBI placed plainclothes officers nearby and the notary, a genuine professional unknowingly cued as part of Nathan's confidence, was scheduled to arrive. Rachel coached me through the script until my trembling felt authentic. It had to. Predators sniff out falsehoods as readily as bloodhounds sniff out fear. But beneath the shaky voice and the trembling hands, my heart was as steady as the metronome on my old desk. Every camera, every microphone, every agent was a chess piece capably placed. I knew the law as well as I knew how to frame a question. I knew how men like Nathan thought in terms of speed and leverage, not patience and consequence. When Monday came, the house looked the way houses always look when something important is about to happen. Ordinary and oblivious. The trap was not cruelty. It was justice, fashioned carefully and coldly, like a surgical incision that would finally let the light into a long-hidden wound. Monday afternoon arrived with the kind of calm that hides thunder. The clock ticked toward 3 as sunlight slanted through the curtains, turning the living room gold. I had brewed tea, set out cookies, and arranged the documents exactly where Nathan would want them. Every detail was deliberate. The trembling of my hands, the slightly uneven breath, the air of a woman too tired to fight anymore. At 2:59, his silver car pulled into the driveway. Right on time. Nathan stepped out in a tailored gray suit, a briefcase in one hand and that trademark smile in place. Smooth, persuasive, false. Behind him came the notary, a polite woman unaware she was walking into an FBI operation. "Mrs. Brooks," Nathan said, voice coated in sugar. "You look wonderful. I brought the final paperwork. Everything's in order now. You'll feel such peace of mind after this." He laid the stack of papers on the table. "Contracts thick enough to bury a lifetime. Now," he continued, "I've arranged a suite at St. Clair's senior residence, one of the best in the city. You'll have round-the-clock care, full privacy. And with me managing the accounts, your assets will be fully protected. You've worked hard all your life. Let me make sure your legacy stays safe." He said it like a promise, but it sounded like a purchase. I reached for the pen, letting it slip slightly between my fingers, as if nerves had overtaken me. My hand shook, rehearsed, perfect. "You're very kind, Nathan," I whispered. "I suppose it's for the best." He nodded, almost triumphantly. "That's right. Just sign here and here." I signed one page, then another. The notary observed silently. But before I touched the third, I paused. My hand stopped midair. Slowly, I raised my eyes and met his. The tremor in my voice vanished. "Nathan," I said softly, "tell me something. How much money do you think I have?" He blinked, momentarily thrown off. "Oh, Mrs. Brooks, that doesn't matter. This is about protecting. Answer the question." He hesitated, then smiled again, condescending. "I'd assume a few $100,000. Maybe $1 million, counting the house." I leaned back, the faintest smile curling my lips. The tone in my voice turned to steel. "Wrong. $50 million. His face changed, confusion first, then disbelief, then greed flickering like fire. He opened his mouth to speak, but I cut him off. "And you," I said quietly, "will never touch a single cent of it." The words hung in the air like thunder before a storm. In the next second, the door burst open. "FBI. Hands where we can see them." Agents flooded the room, swift and precise. The notary gasped as Nathan froze, his hand still hovering over the papers. One agent snapped the cuffs onto his wrists. Another retrieved the documents and briefcase. Nathan's mask shattered. "You set me up," he shouted, twisting as they pulled him toward the door. I stood calm and composed. "No, Nathan," I said. "You set yourself up. I just let you finish the story." The cameras hidden in the clock, the lamp, and the potted plant had captured everything. Every lie, every manipulation, every greedy smile. The audio recording was clear enough to use in court. As they led him away, I poured another cup of tea, steady as ever. The storm was over. And for the first time in years, the silence in my house felt like peace, not loneliness. The trial drew national attention. Cameras flashed as Nathan Caldwell was escorted into the San Francisco federal courthouse in handcuffs, his once perfect suit now rumpled, his charm replaced by hollow eyes. The prosecution called it one of the largest elder financial fraud cases in California history. For weeks, the courtroom became a stage where Nathan's deceit unraveled thread by thread. I sat quietly in the back row, dressed in navy, pearls at my neck, the same ones I'd worn at Lily's wedding. The reporters focused their lenses on Nathan, but sometimes they turned to me, whispering about the widow who brought down the predator. I didn't need their attention. What I wanted was justice, not just for myself, but for every elderly victim who had been manipulated, shamed, or left penniless by men like him. The FBI's investigation went far beyond what even I expected. Nathan wasn't just a desperate gambler. He was a key player in a network that laundered money through fake real estate investments. He'd targeted widows, retirees, and veterans, convincing them to protect their assets by signing over control to his firm. Dozens of lives destroyed, homes lost, futures erased. The evidence we'd gathered, video, audio, digital records, was airtight. When the final verdict came, the courtroom fell silent. 20 years in federal prison for financial fraud and money laundering, the judge declared. Nathan stood motionless, his expression collapsing into disbelief. He turned toward me as they led him away, anger flashing in his eyes. But I didn't look away. I met his stare steadily, not with hatred, but with the quiet certainty of someone who had already won. Lily sat beside me, tears slipping down her cheeks. My daughter, once the radiant bride who believed in fairy tales, now looked like someone who had seen the cost of illusions. She whispered, voice trembling, "Mom, I didn't see it. I didn't see any of it." I took her hand gently. None of us do until we have to. In the months that followed, Lily filed for divorce. She moved into her own apartment downtown, went back to work, and started volunteering at local shelters. Watching her rebuild her life reminded me that sometimes, strength is born from the ashes of humiliation. She was no longer the naive girl in white. She had become her father's daughter, sharp and brave. As for me, I knew what I had to do with the money Charles left behind. The $50 million wasn't meant to sit quietly in a bank. It was meant to fight back. That spring, I founded the Brooks Foundation for Elder Protection, a legal aid and investigative network dedicated to exposing financial abuse against seniors. Rachel Nguyen became its chief legal officer, and together, we launched campaigns on national television, teaching families how to recognize manipulation and protect their assets. Within a year, our foundation helped the FBI and state attorneys expose 25 more fraudsters, recovering over $60 million for victims across the country. Every time a case was won, I felt Charles's presence, not in grief but in purpose. His legacy was no longer measured by wealth, but by the lives it saved. Sometimes I still pass by that same courthouse and watch the doors where Nathan once stood. I don't feel anger anymore, only clarity. As justice, I've learned, isn't loud. It's quiet, deliberate, and patient. Just like the woman everyone once thought was invisible, sitting behind a vase of flowers at table 12. The ballroom at the San Francisco Grand Pavilion shimmered beneath crystal chandeliers. Journalists, politicians, philanthropists, the city's finest, mingled with champagne glasses in hand, unaware that history was about to replay itself in a poetic circle. 3 years ago, I had been the invisible woman at my daughter's wedding, hidden behind a floral arrangement at table 12. Tonight I stood center stage beneath the lights, not as someone's mother or widow, but as Eleanor Brooks, founder of the Brooks Foundation for Elder Protection. The evening's gala was our foundation's first anniversary, a celebration of victories against financial predators who had preyed on the vulnerable. The press had called me the widow who fought back, a title that made me both proud and uneasy. I hadn't fought for fame. I'd fought because silence was a form of complicity, and I had already spent too many years watching people like Nathan exploit others without consequence. The event was nearly over when I saw him. Nathan Caldwell. Flanked by 2 federal marshals, he'd been granted a brief appearance before being transferred to a federal facility in Nevada. The government wanted to show the human face of justice, a warning to others who might follow in his footsteps. He was thinner, his hair shorter, his face drawn. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that almost looked like fear. The reporters swarmed instantly, cameras flashing like lightning. He looked up, and for the first time in a long time our eyes met again. For a moment the room faded. All I saw was the man who once tried to deceive me with a charming smile and forged signatures. The man who underestimated the quiet woman at table 12. I walked toward him through the sea of photographers. Each step echoed against the marble floor, calm and steady. The marshals allowed it. They knew I wasn't here for revenge. I stopped a few feet away, the cameras capturing every breath, every detail. "Nathan," I said, my voice clear but unshaken, "do you remember the day we met?" He swallowed hard. "At the wedding," he murmured. "Yes," I said softly. "You shook my hand and told me it was an honor. You thought you were meeting prey. You had no idea you were meeting the hunter." A few people gasped quietly nearby, and flashes erupted again. Nathan's jaw tightened, but he didn't speak. He couldn't. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear, though every camera tried to capture my lips. "You played your game well, but you made one fatal mistake." His eyes flickered with confusion. "What mistake?" he whispered. I smiled, calm, almost kind. "You chose the wrong widow to mess with." The sentence hung in the air, sharp as glass. The journalists froze, then erupted, the room filling with the sound of shudders and murmurs. It was the kind of line that would be printed in headlines across the country before midnight. Nathan lowered his gaze, shoulders slumping under the weight of his own ruin. There was no fury left, no excuses, only resignation. The marshals took his arm and led him toward the exit. The last image the cameras caught was his bowed head disappearing through the doorway. After he was gone, the room fell into an odd, reverent silence. Then applause, hesitant at first, then swelling into thunder. But I didn't smile. I wasn't celebrating his downfall. I was honoring what it represented. That truth, when patient and precise, could still triumph in a world built on deceit. A reporter approached me with a microphone. "Mrs. Brooks," she said breathlessly, "that was powerful. Do you have a message for the public tonight?" I looked straight into the lens, thinking of the countless faces, the elderly, the forgotten, the quiet souls who feared becoming victims. "Yes," I said. "To those who think age makes us weak, it doesn't. It makes us aware. We've seen enough lies to recognize the truth when it finally stands tall." The crowd applauded again. Somewhere in the distance I thought of Charles, of the promise I'd made to use his gift not for comfort, but for justice. And for the first time since his passing, I felt peace. Not the quiet kind, but the kind born of fulfillment. As the gala lights dimmed and the city glowed beyond the windows, I stood alone for a moment, watching the skyline of San Francisco shimmer under the night. Nathan Caldwell was gone. The predators he represented were falling one by one. And me? I was no longer the widow behind the flowers. I had become the storm, calm, relentless, and unafraid. Weeks after the trial ended, Eleanor Brooks sat in the gleaming studio lights of CNN. The nation had followed her story like a thriller. A quiet widow who outsmarted a powerful financial crime network that had preyed on vulnerable families for years. Now she was ready to speak, not as a victim, but as a voice for justice. Her interviewer asked softly, "Mrs. Brooks, what made you risk everything?" Eleanor's lips curved into a calm smile. "Because silence," she said, "is the most expensive thing we can ever afford." The clip went viral within hours. But what truly shook the nation was the moment she looked straight into the camera and said, with steady conviction, "Try preying on the elderly again. We're waiting with the law and unlimited resources." Those words echoed across America. They appeared on billboards, in courthouse hallways, in schools teaching ethics and civic duty. It wasn't just a warning, it was a declaration. The predators who once viewed widows and retirees as easy targets now lived in fear of a woman who had nothing left to lose and everything left to protect. Eleanor's name became synonymous with resilience and moral strength. Yet she never sought fame or power. When journalists followed her, she was often found volunteering at the Financial Recovery Network, a nonprofit she helped establish to educate seniors about financial safety. The $50 million she had once inherited, money drenched in deceit and manipulation, was now funding shelters, legal aid, and awareness campaigns. "Money was their weapon," she said once in an interview. "I just turned it around." In that transformation, Eleanor became something larger than a headline. She became a movement. Across the country, hundreds of people came forward, inspired to report similar crimes. Investigations reopened. Policies changed. Lawmakers cited her case as a turning point in the protection of senior rights and financial transparency. But to those who knew her personally, Eleanor was still the same woman who made tea every evening at 7, who kept her late husband's photo framed by the window. She had lost much: love, trust, peace, but what she built afterward mattered more. One of her closest friends said, "She didn't fight for revenge. She fought so no one else would have to." As the closing credits of her CNN feature rolled, the final shot lingered on her. Standing outside the courthouse steps, a soft winter sun breaking through the clouds. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed, but she simply stood there, chin raised slightly, eyes calm. The kind of calm that only comes from surviving the storm and winning with dignity. Eleanor Brooks was no longer the widow in mourning. She had become the silent guardian of thousands. A living reminder that courage is not about noise, but about purpose. In the end, her story wasn't about money, betrayal, or even justice. It was about transformation. A woman once broken by deceit had turned her pain into protection, her wealth into a weapon, her loss into light. And as America watched her walk away from the cameras that day, one truth became clear. Some heroes don't wear uniforms or capes. They wear quiet smiles, carry unwavering hearts, and change the world, one fearless choice at a time. After everything, the betrayal, the investigation, the trial, and the quiet redemption, Eleanor Brooks didn't walk away with bitterness. She walked away with wisdom. Her story wasn't just about justice, it was about awakening. And from that journey, she left behind 5 lessons that every listener could carry into their own life. 1. No one is weak when they know their worth. Eleanor once thought she was just a grieving widow, until she realized her voice, her mind, and her integrity were far stronger than fear. 2. True strength lies in calmness and knowledge, not in wealth. Money fades, looks fade, but a clear mind and a steady heart can outlast any storm. 3. Kind people don't flaunt what they have, they use it to protect others. She turned her inheritance into a shield, proving that goodness, when empowered, is unstoppable. 4. Predators always think their victims are easy until they target the wrong person. Eleanor was that wrong person. Her silence became her strategy, and her patience became her power. 5. Old age is not the end. It's the moment when wisdom becomes your greatest weapon. In her later years, she didn't just survive. She led, inspired, and rebuilt what others had broken. Eleanor Brooks taught us that no matter how dark the world can get, light can come from the most unexpected places, even from a quiet woman who refused to stay silent. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring more real-life stories of courage, healing, and transformation to light.